I just speak my peace, keep my peace.
What's good, y'all? Welcome to episode 106 of the Speak My Peace podcast. As always, I'm your gracious host, Greg Lacey. We got a special guest today. I want to introduce to you all. I feel like we got a great episode underway. We're going to definitely cover some great topics, but Nicole, you can go ahead and introduce yourself to the people.
Hello, world. All your amazing listeners. What is up? My name is Nicole. I am from a small island in the Caribbean called St. Martin. I currently work in the tech field here in America. I also have a podcast too called The Chatterbox. If you guys are looking for one, check it out. But yeah, I'm super excited to be here today. Thank you so much for having me on the pod.
No problem. Before we do get into anything, I do want to give you the room to speak about. I know you strategically didn't mention it, but you have a great nonprofit called Empower You. Can you give the people the background on what Empower You is?
Sure. So growing up in the Caribbean, I don't know how much people really know about life in the islands other than just going there for vacation. But growing up in St. Martin specifically, we don't really have a lot of support around building career development. There's just not a lot of financial aid options for students. And I was always very academically inclined, and I knew I wanted to go to the United States to further my education. But when it came to funding that dream, it was just really, really difficult. And even just figuring out what I needed to do to get there. I did have a few college counselors, but even still, the information they gave me is completely inaccurate when you come here and you realize all the opportunities that Americans have and the support that Americans have for one another. And I realized that there was this gap in my community, and it was really upsetting at first because it's why wasn't someone willing to do this for me, my generation? But I realized, I could complain about it or I could do something about it. And so I decided, you know what, why not me? Why not go ahead and start a nonprofit that would essentially help fill this gap and help give my community the support that they needed to go out and be the best version of themselves, because the Caribbean has so much talent, and I often feel like we don't support each other. And hopefully, Empower You is built to help change that. So we have resources, mentorship, scholarships for Caribbean students, especially from St. Martin, because I just know our people can be great, and I just want to be a part of that. So
that is inspiring. I feel like, people come from, whether it's here in the United States or whether it's international, people come from undeserving backgrounds, or not so undeserving backgrounds, undeserving communities. And it's we always have that thought of what can I do to improve this? And sometimes it literally is just a thought. So to hear someone have that thought and then act on it and carry it out is definitely inspiring to hear. But as we start this episode, I'm going to start off with an icebreaker. Just to get
the juices flowing. I feel you.
I want to ask you, what was moving from the island to United States, especially where you are, what was your wake-up call to wow, I'm really here? Was it experience? Was it event, or or if you haven't had it, or even if you've had it yet?
It's interesting that you say that, because St. Martin is a country that, despite being in the Caribbean, we're pretty much the playground for Americans, believe it or not. So my whole life, literally ever since I was a kid, because my country has always prioritized tourism over our own people, my entire upbringing was pretty much America. You know what I mean? So everything that I learned, all the media that I watched was pretty much American television. So I do have family in the States, so I have been here a few times before moving, and I always idolized the United States, really and truly. I always thought you guys were just absolutely incredible and so brave and confident, and just was this place where you could really do whatever it is you wanted to do. So when I came to America, I was super pumped. I was I'm ready to leave the island. There's nothing to do here. I'm ready to go. And then I got to the US, and it was a very entirely different reality, because you realize all of the TV shows and movies about America is not America. And so I had this whole idolized college view that I thought America was going to be. And I went to a Big Ten university, so I definitely got that American college experience. And I think during that, only when I left college did it really, I think, finally set in where I was. But also I I guess like growing up in the Caribbean, it's very different growing up as like a Black individual. There's not a lot of like the narrative that you have, I think, in the United States about Black people in the island. So it was like figuring out who I was in this country or like how I choose to identify was very much a struggle. And I think that's what made me really realize like, oh, like I'm in America because on the island it's like a completely different world and like there's diversity, like true diversity. And then when I came to the States, it was like waking up and seeing that people treat people differently with like all of these
Mhm.
stereotypes or assumptions. That was like, oh my God, like what is going on?
Yep. The realities of America. I'm glad that you touched on just finding yourself, because that was one of the topics I wanted to speak on. One of the episodes you were speaking about just mental images and the mental images people have of us and how we tailor towards the mental images we have of ourselves or who we are truly being. How do you manage your own mental image of yourself and not dictate and not let someone else's mental image of you dictate who you
Ooh,
are?
it took me a minute, but I mean, honestly, from the get-go, I think like the universe was like, we just gonna bless this child with just all of the minority groups just in one. So for most people that see me, they're like, oh, she's a Black girl, but I'm actually half Indian and half Black. So most people don't even recognize that I'm Indian first, like first and
Mhm.
foremost. And I was baptized and I was also like baptized into the Hindu faith as well. So I have like two religious backgrounds. And so from the get-go, it was always like, who am I? Why am I here? I'm like this weird little kid that doesn't really fit into any of these boxes, but yet here I am. And growing up in St. Martin, like in America, I feel like you guys are taught a lot about like your history, even though maybe it's skewed in some ways. You at least have a history
Very.
to learn. Where I grew up, like we don't learn our history. It's actually really sad. And it's only recently that we've had sort of this revolution of people fighting to actually advocate for our history. And in me, like doing the research and like understanding St. Martin's role in like global development and just understanding like who my parents were and what their parents were going through and how that all culminated into me existing in this world, I have like this strong sense of who I am now that honest to God, like nobody in America could ever shake that, regardless of how much they want to project onto me. Like I am so grounded in who I am and why I'm here that I it hurts me to see other people that like take on a lot of these stereotypes that other people project onto them and they think like it's part of their identity and it's not. And I feel like in a lot of ways it's crippled a lot of people and that's why I honestly feel really honored to be on this podcast and even talk about this because I want more people to wake up and realize like you are a powerful being. There's a lot of stuff that the world projects on us to make us feel as though we cannot be, you know, what it is we want to be. And it's like we each have to step into our power because we all have it. And I think it's about time people recognize that, you know?
I think one of the most important things is being grounded, and the journey in being grounded is difficult because you have to first figure out yourself, and figuring out yourself. It's like a journey of honesty. It's like dictating what you allow, dictating what you do, and how people treat you, and how you treat other people. And then amongst that journey, you also just have to just truly just understand, what is meant for you, what is not meant for you, and weeding out like all that negativity and stuff. It's so difficult, especially in this digital media age, where you're fed so much information, and you speaking about like stereotyping that's been around as long as racism has, but it's still prevalent today. People will say racism has going away. It hasn't. But stereotyping is loud and it's prevalent still to this day. And I know you believe, and the reason why I bring that up is because we live in a digital media age, and so we're being fed so much information. I know you believe social media is a lie, and I agree with that too. But how do you manage staying grounded, being true to yourself, and not really allowing what happens on social media or what's in the social media, or not even the social media, just in the digital media age affect you?
Yeah, it is hard because I think like my journey has just been like me trying to even figure out how it works for me. And yeah, I just want to say before I answer your question, like racism, I think, is one of those things in America that I feel like also gets confused with like capitalism, like genuinely and truly. Like I feel
Yes.
like a lot of people don't really understand. Like and I don't know if it's because I was raised outside of the United States why I'm able to see it this way, but I feel like a lot of the time, like we think that things are because of race when really and truly it's because of capitalism. And if you really understand, like how corporations are trying to maximize profits based on the market and then looking at what the actual American market is like. I feel like most people don't really understand all of that. And so I sometimes am like on this weird line where like, I'm like, is it racist or
Which
is
one
it
is it?
capitalism? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like, yeah, I see how the two conflate, but it's like really, it's a bigger issue than
Yeah.
just like racism. But yeah, to come back to like digital and social media, I agree 100%. A lot of it is fake. And I think a lot of it is because people want to put out this like good image of themselves. But I think like with the media, I've noticed I personally don't really like watch the news too much. I don't really like, I think the media is one of those things that like really drains your energy. And I don't think people recognize like or are able to protect their energy enough to distance themselves from things that really suck their energy. And I notice it like, especially with the pandemic and everything that's gone on in America, a lot of people take like individual stories that happen and then make that like their entire reality. And it's
Mhm.
like, that's not true. Like what you're seeing, what the news is perpetuating is like one small, like part of what's actually happening in the United States. But when you're constantly in this world and all that's all you're seeing, it makes perfect sense that you would go crazy. And so for me, the way that I get out of that is my spiritual practice has been like my main grounding methodology. It's like how I try to live my life. And it starts with really living in the present moment. And I feel like a lot of the time, social media takes us out of the present moment and puts us in a comparative mind, which is not really in our best interest. It doesn't serve us in any way. And in fact, it's like lies that we tell ourselves
Yeah.
in our brain that have no grounding in reality. And so it's like I spend so much time literally like reflecting on myself and like reflecting on the things that I allow to trigger my emotions. Cause a lot of the time, like we'll have things that trigger our emotions, but we're so consumed in the emotion that we forget that like you can step away from that. And
Mhm.
like getting angry, like, yes, something can make you angry, but you are not angry. You're just feeling anger. You're experiencing anger. And so it's like having that mental discipline to be able to separate myself from the thing that's triggering that emotion and really look at it and try to understand it has really helped me because then I no longer, when I see those things happen and I see like it's trying to put me in that state, I have the stronger mental power to be like, no, and stay in the present. But it's a mental battle. Like it takes time to really build that. And for me, meditation has been a great way to work on that. But I know it's not for everyone. It's just like figuring out what is that thing that brings you back into the present moment.
Yeah. I know we were talking offline. I was telling you that, for a certain amount of time, I haven't been really active on social media. And that was it was partly because of that. It was also because I've seen like social media go from it being a fun place and a safe place to where here we are having fun, here we are sharing pictures, here we are sharing experience. So where it goes to like now it's like, look at me, look at my life, look at what I'm doing. I'm
Look at
doing
me
this. And
flex like you're a
yeah,
loser and you don't have all this money and like
exactly.
this not real. And I'm like, the people that are doing that aren't even really doing that. And it's like this whole mind game. And I agree, it's just crazy. And
Yeah.
that's why I'm concerned about the metaverse. I'm like, oh Lord.
Yeah. And
Oh.
that's exactly like when I took a step away from it, it was like I still love social media for the reason of me.
Yeah,
Like I use it for the most part for like jokes and stuff like that, share memes, share
exactly.
videos and
As
stuff with
it
my friends.
should
But when I
be.
saw it become like a show and tell, and it was like, okay, I don't want to
Like,
do this
buy
because now,
this
yeah, like now I got to
influencer
perpetrate
that.
a life that I don't want to live. Like I love living my life and I love living a private life and I want to share with y'all what I want to share. But I want to share with y'all to say, okay, I'm doing this and you're not doing this. So now you should get like me. And it's like, that's not something that I want to do.
Yeah, exactly. And it just makes people perpetuate an ideal that's not real. Like it's just not real. Like people go through all sorts of things in their life. And obviously they're not going to show you when they're feeling down, but it's
Mhm.
like because we're only seeing the good, like your brain is it just thinks like everything is good and then it thinks something's wrong with you. And it's like,
Yep.
no, sis, no.
That's not true. Yep.
It's all
And even
good.
speaking about the metaverse, like I'm equally concerned because I mean, I feel like my mind state and how the younger generation interact with social media, it has changed. Like I remember years ago, it may have been almost like a decade ago. I remember Tyler Creator he had a tweet, and I'm gonna paraphrase. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like, "How are you being a cyberbully? Just close your phone or turn off your phone." And I remember when that tweet was first tweeted, I had the same mindset. I'm like, "Yeah, just turn off your phone. Like, what's going on?" Like, and then now here I'm, years later and I'm older, I'm like, I understand why these younger kids can't get away from it, because for one, they were born in this era to where like that's their
That's all
life
they know. That's
and
all
they
they
can't get away
know.
from that. Like
Yeah,
whatever, if
exactly.
someone is bullying you in at school, you may turn to social media after school to escape that. But now you have to deal with this bully and their friends, and they're continuing to harass you online. It was like, I remember a couple of years ago, like there was a slew of teenagers, unfortunately, that were taking their lives on like Facebook Live.
That's
And
wild.
I remember seeing that and I was like, I understand. Like that probably is when my mind state changed towards that tweet. It was like, okay, I understand now, because you can't escape. Like there's no way for you to escape what
But
is
that
going
breaks
on.
my heart because they think that ending their life ends their misery, and it doesn't. You know, like
Yeah.
it might in like that moment, but really and truly, like that's it. It's like forgetting why we're even alive. Like we're getting so distracted by like all this other stuff that we forget like why we're even experiencing life in the first place. And I agree, like as an engineer, you know, I work with all the metaverse and see all the VR and the AR, and like it's incredible what that stuff will do. Like it's absolutely incredible. Not just like because I think it'll allow us to defy space. So like we could be in the same room in the metaverse recording a podcast and like use it for great things. My concern is that because humans don't understand the value of the present, they don't understand the value of who they are, that having a toy that can be very distracting, where you can create your avatar to be hot AF and like you can be the ultimate catfish and nobody would know and it's all fake. People might want that more than they want their real life. If their real life doesn't match up to all the happiness and clout that they have in the metaverse. And my concern is like detaching from the reality because you just don't want to come to grips with your existence and like the fact that we're alive and that being alive is a burden in a sense. And
Yeah.
that's like my concern more so because it's great, but it's like if people don't understand their power, then they're gonna go get distracted by something else. And it's
Yeah.
like,
It's unfortunate.
yeah.
I will say, I feel like since the announcement of the metaverse, especially like Facebook, I've seen a lot of people like having resistance towards it. And I don't know if it's just my age group and people older than me that feels this way. So I don't know how like the younger
That's until
generation
they
feel.
put on the goggles. I'm telling you, when they put on the goggles, it'll be so lit. They would be like, oh my God,
This is
I
it.
want one. You know what I mean? And then the people that don't do it will just be like those old people that didn't want to come on the internet. Like the younger generation will just be like, screw you, old person. I'm gonna be in metaverse with all my NFT swag anyways. Like
It goes back into the escapism. It's like, oh, I can
exactly,
live this other
exactly.
reality, don't have to deal with this burden that is life. So I mean, I can see it. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how that develops, and it's going to see where we are next year, especially with the world opening back up and seeing, or the world looking like it's opening back up. And I think people are going to go back into that reality, understand like who they were prior to this pandemic and being in the house by themselves. They're probably going to revert to being condemned to the house and things like that. So I think this next year, the next 12 months is going to be very interesting to see how
It
these things
will
develop.
be. It will be. Because people have had time to reflect and they see the cracks. You know what I mean? They see, like, is everything like we thought it was? Things ain't as good as we thought. And it's good, though. I think it's good for people to recognize that because capitalism has been a fantastic system. Don't get me wrong. It's brought us so much. But I think we need to remember why we're here. Like, why are we working? Isn't it not so that we all have a great life? You know what I mean? And if
Yeah.
we're not doing that, then maybe we should rethink this.
Yeah. The thing with that though, I think that we get lost in that. I think with just so much goes on in life. Like I know me specifically, like I had to go through so much and to really actually realize like what my life purpose was, because like for so long, like I grew up an athlete. So I figured all my entire life I was to grow up and be a professional athlete. It wasn't until I was 16 years old, like this is probably not going to happen. So now I got to shift my goals. And then I shifted my goals, and it wasn't until I want to say maybe like around age 25 that I really actually realized like what my life purpose was. And I think people are like that duration and that journey, when people actually realize that, it varies from everyone. Some people find out way sooner, some people find out way later. But I think that's also another thing that hinders us in realizing just how important or how great life actually is, despite all the negatives that's around it.
Exactly. It's having gratitude and really like spending time with yourself. Because, like you said, most people are trying to escape who they are. And it's like, You can't escape who you are. You can run, but at the end of the day, it's you in this body until you decide to turn the lights off. So it's like you might as well get to know it.
Yep. Listen, I appreciate these alley oops because these segues are perfect because that was where I was going next episode about gratitude. you had a statement in that episode about asking like why do people feel entitled for life to be easy, or for life to be happy, or like for life to be easy. Why do you believe that? Why do you believe that we feel like we are entitled to that? Or why do you believe that other people may feel like they're entitled to that? I should ask.
Because we have so much that we've forgotten how hard it was. You know what I mean? Like I feel like humans, especially in the westernized civilization, even me growing up on a little island in the middle of the Caribbean is hella privileged. And I think like we don't realize how privileged we are to have shelter, to have an industry that does make food for us, to have institutions that do take care of our health, to even have policies that like allow us to have the basic rights that we have. Like we still got lots of ways to go, but at least we have, you know, some basic protection. And it's like if you think of any animal that's born in the wild, you think Mother Nature gives a damn if it lives or dies. Like, do we even care about all the
No.
gazelle that got attacked by the mountain lion last night? Like, nobody cares. And yet, we as humans have grown so entitled to have all of these expectations of the world, forgetting that we too came from the jungle. You know, we too came from the dirt. And like, we've just created this entire world around ourselves that we've forgotten that we belong to this world. And so like that's where I was coming from when I was like talking about people feeling entitled, because it's like, boo, we could have been born literally in the midst of the savannah and have to hunt and walk everywhere for food, but we don't. We don't have to worry about that. I
Yeah.
could walk across the street, go to Kroger, and the chicken will be there. I don't have to butcher it. I don't even have to think about where the chicken came from. It's just there.
I think that goes back into even just about being grounded and understanding yourself. We had a great quote in that episode about you said with gratitude, you don't operate from a place of insecurity because you realize that you are enough. And I think that is important. It's like there's power and granted, again, journeys are different and people come into them self-realizations about certain things. It takes time. But I think that when you have power in understanding you and who you are and yourself and being one with yourself and understanding, you know, what you are capable of and the power of what you can do, I think that is when we become greater as a people. I think that there's so much power in self-awareness. And I think there's so much power in knowing your worth and knowing that what you're capable of, despite, you know, all the odds that may be stacked up against you.
Exactly. That's why like it infuriates me sometimes in America when I see like black people, they don't believe in themselves and then they're like, oh, it's the world's fault. I'm like, no, like we could like literally if we all just recognize our power and like use the resources that America gives you to your advantage, if we educate each other about financial literacy and all of these things, like we can all build wealth. We can all be successful. We can all do it. It just takes working together and like really being honest with each other and actually supporting people. Like, and that's one thing I've always admired about Americans. Like you guys support each other so much. And that is really to me what makes America great is the love that you guys have for each other, to listen to your music, to preach and push your culture on the rest of the world. Like that is what makes this country so great. And imagine if more people did it. Like, I'm just like, it would just be, we would be in a completely different world, completely different.
I think that I definitely agree. I think that the sense of community, like I stress it enough, especially with Black people, like we look so much for like acceptance from people outside of our groups. We look for so much acceptance within the country as a home. And I think that we have moved away from those communities that were in the 60s and 70s and 80s to where it was like we uplifted each other. And I think that there's power in that because when you have someone that looks like you, come from the same walk of life as you, they have empathy for you and they have sympathy for you. So now they can support you because they look at you as a human being rather than just as another person or less than a person.
Exactly.
Me, myself, I kind of identify myself as, just because of where I come from, born and raised in Compton, California. I know the negative connotations that come with that city and how it's looked at from a bigger scope. But I know that what is expected from a young Black man from that city it's not exactly who I am, what people expected from me. And it's not that I'm wrong. It's not that I'm right, but it's just that my life was different than someone else's. I made it out. I made the best of what I did. Not to say other people didn't, because, you know, it's a jungle.
It's wrong
It's
that
a
they
concrete
even
jungle.
say that like you have to be this type of way. Like I think it's so limiting for Black men to feel like you guys have to ever fit into a stereotype. Like I feel like it's really ridiculous, and it upsets me because it's like, isn't like whatever you do with your life, that is what Black men do, period.
Exactly.
Like it's not like you have to fit into this small image of what Blackness can be. Like that is the thing that really infuriates me. Or like if you do something that's outside of that main, then you're white or you're this or you're that. And it's like, no, like you're a person, you have curiosities, let them guide you. Like it shouldn't be a race thing. Like it's like, this is just what I like. Like damn.
Exactly. And I think that's unique. That's another thing that you touched on in one of the episodes. But I think that
I'm flattered that you listen to my podcast.
Oh no,
like
I did
like you have notes.
I had to do my research. But you spoke about just uniqueness and it being valuable. And the reason why I brought that up is because like I think of my background and I think of what I made from what I come from. Like, I think that is a unique experience and that makes me a unique individual. But I think when you think of uniqueness, people also have negative connotations from it, because when you think of uniqueness, people think weird because you don't fit in a certain stereotype.
Weird people, period.
Exactly.
Okay. If you're not weird, we ain't friends. I'm sorry to tell you. Weirdos unite. Like
exactly. But for that reason, like I consider myself weird and I don't think it's a negative connotation from it. But look, I embrace it because I think that I think people connect weird and unique.
I feel you.
I think they're synonyms, but I think people have that negative connotation when it comes to it. But because I made the best out of my situation, because I prevailed from whatever was up against me, I accept that. But how much value do you think that just being unique carry?
I mean, it's the greatest value. It's you being yourself. Like I feel like I remember there was this one interview with Snoop Dogg and he was just like, everyone was like, oh, like, how are you just so authentically you? And he was like, who else am I supposed to be?
Yeah.
And like, that's the thing. Like, who else are you supposed to be? Like, it's weird that you would ever want to be like anybody but yourself. That to me is what's really confusing. Like to me, uniqueness is what makes us like that is life. Like that is why we have value. Like there is nothing on this planet that is exactly like you or me. Nothing. We could make all the metals. We have all these diamonds. We have all this stuff. We work on making replicates, but there is no replicate to who we are. And to me, like owning that is the ultimate power, because we recognize like there is nothing like you. Therefore, your experiences, your perspective is of value, which is why you should share it. You know what I mean? And like, it's just, I don't understand why anyone would want to be like a follower. I'm like, be your own person. And I can assure you, just by being you, even though the people around you may not get it, they may be confused, by you being you, you will attract the right people into your life instead of attracting people that think they like you based on you trying to be this fake version of yourself that you're not happy with. And then they sense that you're fake. And it's like this weird friendship that's not really real. Just be you. The right people will find you. Like, I can assure you, there's like, what, 7 billion of us on the planet? You mean to tell me there ain't a few that would like you for you? You know?
Exactly. And I think that what you brought up earlier, just the power in meditation and things like that. Like, I just started therapy. I think probably like I'm in either month 4 or 5, but that's also that, like the power that I've learned and just being in those sessions and talking to someone, having an unbiased opinion about just my life and my journey has been eye-opening, but also just me getting things off my chest that I have been holding in for so long, or even things that I didn't know that I was holding in. Me just being open and being one with someone.
Be vulnerable.
It's so, it's like, support. It's so releasing. Exactly.
Yes. And that is why we need community, like literally for that. Because it's like the whole world needs to heal. Like everybody is holding on to stuff that they don't need to hold on to. And it's like, that is what's holding us back. That is so beautiful. I'm proud of you. That's awesome.
And then another thing is like, you spoke about meditation. I just really I've probably been doing it for like a month. I haven't gotten really a consistent rhythm. I try to do it every day. Then I went from doing it every day to doing it like just the weekdays, and then because the weekends got so busy. But also just like the practice of that, it's so powerful as well, because like I'm a type of person to where I'm always, my mind is going 1,000 miles a minute. So it's like,
all the time.
Here I am in a March, and I'm already thinking about what I'm going to do in December. Here I am in March, thinking about what I'm doing next March. And I
That's
think
capitalism, though, right?
That's true. I think that the power in that, and just being like one with yourself, and also just being present in a moment and dealing with what I have to deal with today, has brought a lot of power to me, and trying to figure out things as well. What have you learned in your experience?
So proud. That is awesome. I feel you, because I honestly, despite being a Hindu, and like my family are very much, I feel like my spirituality comes a lot from my Indian side, more so. And I've always been around meditators. But when I was a kid, like most kids, I was like, that's stupid. Like, why would you just sit on the ground and breathe? Like, that just seems stupid. I'm gonna go watch SpongeBob, deuces. But as I got into college and I studied engineering, and it was like, I don't know if you know anything about what engineers go through, but it's traumatic. It's just a lot of math. And it was just like very stressful, to say the least, especially being a foreigner in America, just trying to keep my head above water. And Michigan has like this one class, that's called like Jazz 450. It's not even called meditation. And literally the class was literally the only thing you had to do was go in there and meditate with this incredible lady named Martha. And at first I was like you, my head runs a million miles an hour, because there's so much I want to do in my life that I'm always like feeling that I was behind, or I was losing time, or I was just not doing what I was supposed to do. And sitting down and meditating, it at first was very annoying, because like you have your mind and it's just going, and you're just like, can you just give me a freaking break? Like, damn. And I realized like I needed to stop judging myself for thinking, because that was the first thing. Like I was like, oh my God, like why won't I just stop thinking? Like why can't you just stop thinking? And I realized like I had to stop judging myself. So that was the first thing. And then as I would meditate, I would just look at the thoughts that I would have, and I would try to wonder, like, where is this coming from? Like, where is this? Like, why am I thinking this right now? What is it? Is it like I'm anxious that I'm going to fail that test? Is it that I'm worried that I didn't respond to that person's text and they think that I hate them? Or like, what is it? Where is this coming from, really and truly? And just sitting there and seeing the thoughts that would arise when I would ask myself those questions, like it just gave me this deep realization of a lot of the things, like you said, that I was just holding on to, like limiting beliefs that I had, or just like these unrealistic expectations that I was putting on myself that didn't need to be there. And then sure enough, as I just sat with myself and breathe, and every time I would just think about it and see where it was coming from, it brought a peace within it. And even now, as I meditate, I wish I meditated every day. I would like to get there. I'm actually like now in a meditation class with a community, so that I feel more like compelled to sit and do it. Cause I'm the type of person that I would rather be asleep than meditating. So, but it was just like sitting there and recognizing and just being with myself. And slowly I began to realize, like, as I built this power to be able to return to my breath, which is really the power of focus, which most of us are losing because of social media. Well, actually, that's a myth. I'm not even going to put out myths in the world. That's not true. Our attention span has not changed, but our ability to focus on things, I think, has been affected by social media. And being able to just return to the breath, even now, like when I see myself get stressed or anxious, I'm like, wait, separate, go back to the present. And it's like a little thing like that you don't realize has so much power, because you do it enough times and you realize you're actually in control, and the emotions that you have are not like, you're just feel like they're like waves that come and go. You know what I mean? And yes, you feel it now. And you can like just feel what that feels like, but eventually you'll be back, to how things were. And it was just like having this like sense of peace of knowing that my conscious experience is always changing. So of course my emotional state is always going to change. My mind does not want to stay in the present. That's like the last thing it wants to do. It wants to do everything else because staying in the
But
present is boring, you know?
yeah,
And it's training. But then I think that's interesting. I'm like, why am I bored by the present when the present is the most
it's
beautiful
here.
thing that is?
Yes.
Exactly. And so it's like really like trying to understand myself. And in my practice, even through meditation, and you will probably experience this as you continue meditating, there is more to your sensitivity as a human being than we are ever taught to believe. So, for example, when you sit and you meditate and you really start to think about and you put yourself in your body, like really and truly feeling what it is to be a body, and you start to think, like, okay, let me go and feel my feet, for example, you realize that what you feel is spaciousness. It's really weird. It's like you don't feel a foot, you feel like spaciousness. But slowly and surely, like you increase your sensitivity and you start to realize like that your experience of being is a constantly changing thing. And it's like as you realize that, like you realize that what you really are is the observer of your experiences. But oftentimes, like because we are born and we're fed this story about like who we are and as being beings with identities and histories, that we forget all of that. And through meditation, I think you'll get there. It's just like really honing in. And I don't know if I answered your question. I feel like I
Yeah,
went
yeah,
off
you
on a
definitely did.
tangent.
No, you did. I appreciate it. I think that it's so hard to be, especially, with
It
owning
is
things
hard.
and
It
trying to start
is.
things. It's so hard to be present in the moment. But again, like you said, there's so much beauty in being present in the moment and enjoying it. Like I think that thinking so far ahead, it robs you of the experience of what you're going through, whether you may be dealing with something personal, whether you may be dealing with something great, whether you have great things coming on the way. It's so you get robbed of those experiences when you're thinking so far ahead. As a podcast host, as a founder of a nonprofit organization, as a tech engineer, how do you remain centered? Because I can imagine, like you say, your mind is moving at 1,000 miles a minute, 1,000 miles an hour. How do you remain centered with? I know you may have deadlines. I know you may have goals set up. How do you not get distracted from going too far down? Like I know you still have to plan down the line, because if you don't,
I'm a
you may put
planner. I
yourself behind
really
that.
am. I'm a
Yeah. So how do
planner.
you how do you stay centered in the present with
I
all those things?
realized like I had to understand myself. I had to understand how I best worked, which again takes like inner reflection and inner dialogue and be like, okay, sis, what would your best day really look like? You know what I mean? Like what would it be to really make you be like in this state of joy? And I'm still learning. So what I'm saying now may change in a few months with me continuing to meditate. Who knows? It's always a changing thing. But for me right now, like yoga, hot yoga has been my like, so I think like, okay, I think I know how I want to phrase this. So when I'm thinking about all of my goals, because like the stuff you mentioned is just the tip of the iceberg. Like I have so many other things that I'm trying to do that I agree. It's like, how do you plan, but still stay true to the present? And I realized for me, I needed a plan, because really and truly, like if I was just going moment to moment without any sort of plan, the ego part of me and the anxious part of me would be so loud that I wouldn't be able to actually enjoy the present. So I had to be intentional about my actions. So I give my time literally just to plan. And when I'm planning, I focus on that. That way, when I'm going about like my day and my job, and I actually have dedicated blocks of time for that activity. So when I give my all to it, I'm giving all of myself to that one thing. I think oftentimes we think like we need to be multitaskers to be efficient. And that's like the like worst thing you could do. Like we are not built to be multitaskers. And it's really about like the power of focus and time management. Like that's literally the T. And when it comes to staying present, like I'm not always in the present, because I agree, like there's things that might tick me off in the day, then you just get all riled up and you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
Or like, I have goals and I'm like, and I'm thinking and I'm planning and I'm like sometimes I'll have like that voice in my head, like, oh, maybe you should have said this, or you should have done that, or why did you do this? And like, what are these people going to think about that? And in that moment, now that I have this practice of being able to notice when I'm in like an emotionally triggered state versus in the present, I can go back to my breath, which is really the grounding thing because it'll never leave me until I die. I always go back to my breath and I'm like, take a deep breath in to really put me back into this present state of being. And then from there, I can address the thing that made me feel some type of way. And I try to do that. And it's not perfect. Like sometimes people annoy me when I'm driving in the streets up here in America. And I'm just like, oh, why human? Why are you annoying me? But then, I laugh at it. And I think it's funny because it's a part of the human experience. Like we have these emotions for a reason. We might as well laugh at ourselves. And I just try to, recognize that even the people that make me upset are just other versions of me. So it's like, I'm mad at you, but really and truly, like, I understand that you're human and you may not be, self-aware enough. You might still have trauma and baggage. And it would be wrong for me to hold you and punish you when like I know you're not even your best version of self. You know what I mean? Because like I know I'm not talking to the enlightened version of you. So it's like I'm not gonna take all that negatively personally because I know it's not personal. I know it's like the best example I have is like imagine you have a dog that's been abused and you try to feed it and it tries to bite you because all it knows is the abuse. Eventually, if you keep loving it, it'll come around and it'll change. And, but that's that community of support that we need in this world. So, yeah, I'm human. It happens. I get irritated. I get in my feelings. I cry, I laugh. I get jealous. But in those moments, I recognize it and I recognize that it's not me. It's just feelings that I have as being a human. And then I come back to the present and then I just love myself for the awareness. And I'm like, yes, team.
It's so
growth.
important. I think my journey, I think the most important part of that has been just incorporated into my morning routines. I'm a type of person to where I like to do everything in the morning because I wake up so early. Like I used to wake up at 6. I try to wake up at 5:30 now. Work out, eat.
I'm trying
run,
to be like you
and do all those things. And
I love sleep. I just love it.
And so like I started incorporating into that because it's like I have so much to do throughout the day. If I get it out the way as soon as possible, then I go out the
but don't think of it as
getting
mindset. It out of the way. You know what I mean? Like think of it as giving time back to yourself. But I think it's awesome that you're attaching it to habits you already have because that makes it easier to build a new habit.
Get in the flow. How have you been in your morning routines?
Ooh, I always tell myself, okay, I have a morning routine that I designed for myself. And then there's the morning I actually have, right? So the morning routine that would be like Harsha or Nicole just doing what she's supposed to do, but doesn't do is I wake up, I sit with myself, I meditate, I would read, drink tea with collagen, get my vitamin D because in America, we're all deficient, even me coming from the islands. And then I would kind of plan my intention for the day and then go about my day. What really happens is I tell myself I'm going to wake up, the alarm goes off, I snooze, I stay in bed until like I know I have to get up for work. Then I get out of bed, brush my teeth, literally go to my computer, open it up, see what's happening. Then I might go on the gram, post some pod promo, and then I begin my day and like go make myself breakfast or something while I'm waiting for my first morning meeting. But it's like, again, like I'm young, like I'm human, like I know I'm not perfect. And so it's like being okay with being imperfect and knowing that it's a journey. And like, I do have to work on my discipline because discipline is self-love and, there's room to grow.
Well, I want to say thank you again for being a guest on the Speak My Peace podcast.
Thank you.
I appreciate this conversation. It has been very enlightening and I hope that the listeners feel the same. Before we do go out of here, I do end a podcast with a segment called What to Watch. It doesn't have to be what to watch, it could be what to read. I'll go first and you can think about what your option is going to be as I go. But as we get out of here, my what to watch for this week is going to be the NCAA women's college basketball tournament. I know around this time, everyone likes to focus their attention on the men's, but we need to watch the women's as well. Not just because they're women, but because it's the same sport. I know a lot of people may have we grew up in this patriarchal society and people are misogynistic and they feel a certain way towards women's sports, but it's literally the same sport. Caitlin Clark they're all amazing athletes, but I'm just pointing out some of my favorite. Kaylin Clark plays for Iowa, amazing athlete. We have Azizi Fudd and Paige Buchers that plays for UConn, two amazing athletes. Two of my favorite athletes, Haley Van Lith, she plays for Louisville. And then we have Zaya Cook, she plays for South Carolina. All great athletes. There's no reason for us to continue this idea of the male sport being more superior than the female sport, because it's not true. They're both equally exciting, and they both have the same goals. They both have the same objective. The only difference is one has a W behind it and one has an M behind it. So my what to watch for this week is the women's basketball tournament, as we are in this March Madness.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. Yes, we need to support our women. Okay, 100%. My what to watch, and this is like literally my favorite show. I wish they would make more seasons. Duncan, please get it together. It's on Netflix. It's called The Midnight Gospel. I think it's a fantastic show for folks that really want to have some of those deeper conversations about life and why we're here, and just kind of rethinking our opinions on a lot of things that we hold near and dear to our hearts, especially like death and understanding just our consciousness. So if that is something that you're interested in learning more about, The Midnight Gospel, it's an animated series by the people that made the Adventure Time. So it's really cool. It's like very trippy. It's very weird. I'm giving you the warning now, but it's absolutely incredible. One of my favorite shows. So yeah, definitely check it out.
I'm going to check that out myself. That is Speak My Piece podcast for this week. I'm out.